Could you imagine if all of the stuff in this chair tread was the thing that got caught? So it took way longer for me to figure out a decent design for this, but this is what I've come up with. It's essentially, I want to have a hinge on a rail attached more or less right to the bottom of this stringer. And the hinge is going to go down this way along the stringer and onto the rail here, so that when I pull this in, so this is going to slide over, that the top here will actually fold out as I'm pushing it in, because when I push it in, the angle is going to get steeper, and this line here is going to fan away. Another thing I was considering actually when designing these two was the actual thickness of the stringer below here. So here I'm only getting a thickness of, I think, yeah, 3-4 inches, versus over here I'm going to get a thickness of 5.5 inches, no, 5.25, more or less, which is a lot more acceptable for a stringer that's just going to be a singular stringer. I'm wanting it to probably be fairly robust, so we're going to go with this model. And the differentiator here was the fact that I just changed up my tread length. So I actually am going with a smaller tread here, that's 9 1/8. But I was kind of looking at my table here that I made a couple days ago, or a couple weeks ago now, and that's a 7.5 inch board. It's not big, but a 9-inch board would put me out to there-ish. So I think that's more than fine, especially for an open-toed concept. You get a little bit more foot room with without putting an actual riser in there. So I'm going to go with that design. You know, I just made 2 skill saws cuts per side, and then I'm going through the Sawzall. It's kind of meticulous work with the Sawzall, because you end up more or less always running the risk of something like that, where you're diving in a little deeper with your blade than you want to be. Alrighty, so now that I got that one stringer done, and it's more or less looking how I want it to look, close, you know, it's not perfect, but I can now start to cut out all of these guys over here, and now that I have a proper saw, I can actually do a decent job cutting it out as well. You can see that I've transferred these lines on this side over to this side. You'll notice a lot of them aren't actually matching. Like, yeah, this is a better example right here. Not even close. So we just kind of move it back and forth a little bit and a little bit until you actually get a profile that you like on your trace lines. Anyways, I'll keep cutting that out, or keep tracing it out rather, and then I'll start cutting again. So I got this dovetail saw. Marked improvement over the last. I mean, it looks worse from that angle. That angle ain't too bad. Same right there. It's pretty damn good. A little bit of sanding and but yeah, much better than using the Sawzall. Not that I won't use the other stringer, but having the right tools make a difference. Who would have thunk? Other thing is, even if I'm off, a lot of guys will be like, oh, just sand it flat, but honestly, that's a doable amount to just take off with a skilly. It's just about getting your saw and keeping your lines actually visual. So I just sanded this one down. Used the belt sander to get, you know, a decent finish, and then finished off with the orbital sander. And one thing I always do when doing stair treads is I flip over and just trace. It ends up being more accurate, and then I'll even go back with my framing square, and ones like that you can see the trace mark versus the square mark, and I'll go with the square mark, but I just want to make sure it's more or less the same as that one. This one was particularly bad. Probably I'm going to cut out the linear rail notches after this, and I sanded it first just because I find it easier to sand things that are one giant piece rather than two thin pieces that's going to be on the bottom side there. Got the notch cut out for the linear rail, but of course when I went to fit it, I had traced out only the inner track, not the actual linear rail. So it does fit in just fine like that, but of course, like a nincompoop, I forgot that this is wider. And the way I did this was just a whole bunch of cuts on the skillet saw, followed by my router, except for I was using a 3/4 inch bit, but I put it just barely hanging on because I was trying to get a little bit more length, and I actually just bent the shaft. So I mean, I can just cut that shaft and hopefully it will go on again, but not good. Anyways, so I'm gonna have to make another cut with the saw there. What's that? Probably another 1/8 of an inch, which is pretty much just another blade and blade. It should be enough to give it a bit of wiggle room. Alrighty, got that in. Little tight spot here. It will go though. Next thing I gotta do is weld up the brackets. So that is how that one is gonna sit. Something like that. I'm probably gonna add on the other linear rail piece, and I'm gonna weld something to go a little bit farther and get a better purchase on these 4 bolts here. And just noticing this, we got that 1/8 inch gap there that I was going for, so sit like this, And I'll have to like block this out somehow. And that bottom piece there will have to sit like that. So I'm gonna probably take some more of that strapping and I'm gonna have to create some sort of base plate kind of thing here that's, I mean, ideally I'm gonna get a larger piece of sheet metal and just do something that goes all the way across, because that's gonna be the strongest. And then secondly, so yeah, there's that's flat, and I'll maybe put it up like 1/8 of an inch above here, so I have a little bit of clearance for when it's actually sliding the tread along the back there. And yeah, that's the plan. But I just have to probably, this isn't gonna work with just the two of them like this. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to get some filler material in here and make it a longer leg. I might even have to do like a T-brace here or something like that, because I'm a little worried about the fact that if I choose to lift up that amount of weight on here, it's just gonna bend in here. Hopefully not, because now there's two of them together, and I could probably even thicken it up some more or something like that. But there is the potential for that. So we'll do our first prototype, not on this side where all the wires are, but on this side where there's no wires. That was left open. And the only constraint I have here is that there's this wire here. I can't remember how I wired that. I'll stay away from that corner at the very least though. So yeah, that's the plan for today. Alrighty, got these brackets done. So that's the whole mechanism there. And there. Molded that together. Now that I look at it, it's not that straight. Anyways, I just spray painted it. But that bracket is gonna go on the bottom side of wherever I choose to split this area here, probably more like here, at 90 degrees from here. So it's actually gonna look something like that. And that allows for the most surface area here for the joint to mate up nicely. And I'm gonna have to determine how this sits just based on the hypotenuse of my stairs. So I'm gonna have to choose, so again, I drew it out and it should be at this point here or something around that. But that's not necessarily accurate if my steps got pushed, you know, like 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, and 1/8. So I'm gonna do it based on the hypotenuse. I'm gonna cut my bottom here at my bottom riser height. And once that's cut at that bottom riser height, I'm gonna measure back so many inches from that point. Again, I guess I can make this joint more or less wherever I want it to be. In fact, really, it should be at the center of a riser. So I'll mark that out, whatever a center of a riser is. Measure from my point up there to the point here. Reference my drawing of where my hypotenuse should be. Then I'll make my measurement from the backside of the bottom tread and make sure I make up that distance correctly. I think that will work. Okay, so just got this cut. So that's the bottom piece. That was off one of the third shitty stringers that I had. And I spent like a good amount of time double checking my measurements because I only have 3 beams and it would really suck if I got those wrong. So I have that welded bracket now. It's gonna sit on the bottom here. And notice how I had this hinge here that sits slightly proud. So I just welded these on the back side so that it sits perfectly flat there. And additionally, before I even attach that, I'm going to just put a GRK right through here so that I can tighten this up as, tight as I can and not have this sort of wobbly. It's the only real method I can think of. Okay, so that's how it should be sitting. Now for the word. It is goddamn near perfection. So yeah, funny how little tiny incremental things make a difference. And actually, if I look at this, somehow by some miracle or another, it is sitting perfectly flat on that beam. If I move myself down, check out the bottom, I might end up just doing a slight trim at the back here, but other than that, it is sitting exactly where I want it. Was working with that. All right, so it does work. It does hinge. Oh, okay, that's another issue. This isn't folding enough, but okay, that kind of works. It's very stiff. Come on. Oh no. Okay, so that's not gonna work. Yeah, that's not gonna work. I mean, that kind of works. Yeah, it ain't smooth. It does work. So, you can't quite see it, but I added a joint there and an extra piece of linear rail. And so this should be extended. I should get an extra 6 inches of like lift this way. And that should allow it to pass that beam. We'll see though. Oh, I might I tighten those too much. Oh, well that's less than good. Alrighty, little update here. So I cut out this large base plate here that is going to more or less sit on this ledge here. And I measured it out, so that's almost half an inch, and then this is half an inch, like, or 3/16 of an inch. And then that's another, oh, you can't even see the actual back bracket's another 1/4 inch, so that should put me out the inch of that ledge. Well, the video stopped recording, but I got this installed. Not bad. Was a mistake. I put the bracket on first, and then I stuck this onto it. I'm not entirely sure if that was the right way to do it, but actually, looking at this right now, well, I've got that thing under there, but there's enough of a gap between the wood and the metal here. I do need to figure out some method to make sure that stops rubbing up against this, though. Alrighty. Second one in. I did that one with the hardware installed first. Like I thought with that one, if I thought it was hard to get in those 4 screws, it was a lot harder to maneuver this in. I have no idea why, but this tread or stringer was like way heavier than the other one. So I don't know if it was just because my bracket was a little bit beefier here with just one more piece of metal. Like 3/8, that 3/8 bracket there is the only thing different, right? Or not 3/8, 3/16, but yeah, that was interesting to say the least. Alrighty, so these are the steps I'm doing. Just like a 3/4 inch trim, and I'm just doing a bead of glue and pinning in with some 18 gauge. Alrighty, got all these made up. That took way longer than I thought. One massive beam down there, so it's 12.5. And over here I'm at 12 and, well, at the edge, obviously. And I'm sitting at 12 and 1/4 here. Move that ever so slightly. Okay, still right on the edge here, and exactly 12.5 there. So now, if I take my speed square, just do something like that. That's looking pretty freaking close. Dead on. So this is sitting as plumb as I can get it, at least for the moment. And that's important because now when I stick my level on one of these, I know it's 90 degrees, you know, more or less. I could use a square as well to double check that, which I do as well. And I'm showing like more or less perfectly level there, and that's showing a little bit off of 90 here. So look how it's sitting too. Does in fact seem to be the case. That is perfectly level there. Well, I mean, like slightly out, but that shows that this edge has to go down. That's when I brought my sander. As I see a gap on this side, which means I have to take a bit off of that side so that that comes down to square. And that would also make it sit more level, I'm pretty sure. Not really, level is level. But anyways, this has to come down. Okay, to fasten down these treads, I'm going to be using these 5.5-inch DRKs. And that puts me, fairly deep into the stringer there. But, it's going to be a single point of attachment. It better be decently skookum. And also going to glue it because I don't think it would be very strong if I didn't, and it would squeak, especially with all that torque on it. Alrighty, another update here. Just plunging out this for the mortise and tenon, and the way I usually do that is I just drill a bunch of holes in here. You can see a little deep there. I'm only going 3/4 of an inch. It doesn't need to be a lot, but there's a lot of weight on this joint, so I don't think it's going to be super critical to be like super deep. It's just to actually keep them together. This one I might go a bit deeper actually. The only thing I'm worried about is actually hitting my 2 screws there. This tenon is going to be the thing. It's going to sit on that beam and hold this up in the air. Alrighty, so I got both of these tenons in. I put a tenon in here, and right now I just have a nail going through a hole I drilled that should be more or less going right through that tenon. Let's see. Make sure everything is actually here. Okay. It's going through. And I have the tenon in down here. And that tenon should be able to hang there. Alrighty, so I just routed in that guy there to the bottom, and that has seemed to really stiffen this up quite a bit. There's still some play in it, but a lot less than there was. And now that I have that steel bracket on there, honestly, this is going to have to be some thicker steel or something eventually, but for now, it's fine. But yeah. So I need some method to make this lighter for one. I'm also going to need to print covers for these brackets because that just damaged that as well. But I just want to see if this friggin' works. This. Working. Uh-oh. Could you imagine if all of a sudden this chair tread was the thing that got caught? All right, so that's what it looks like here. Doesn't look like terrible. I kind of thought it would look better from down here. It's actually kind of cool. This is less cool. I knew that was gonna be ugly, but not that ugly. So I don't know if I ever did do a final update, but both the stairs are done. This one is all done, and this one is all done. I also 3D printed these brackets here for covers. They don't stick very well though. I think I gotta fix that somehow to make it sit flush. Anyways, just a cover because that's a little ugly. It's a little nicer. But yeah, so that one's done and that one's done. And the neat thing about this one actually is that I don't have to do quite what I have to do with that one. I could if I wanted to, but I don't have to. I can just go up. How it can stay. And then it just sits like that. You got a little more room, and if I ever want to open these windows, well, let's actually see. I don't think I'll get that one open all the way, but this one I can get open most of the way. So yeah, if I want to open it all the way, I have to do it like this one. Oh, no way. That's hilarious. So both of them end up getting blocked. That's funny. These aren't really walkthroughs though. They're just more like in the summer when it gets warm, you just kind of put these open. Alright, sorry for the sound quality on the video. There was an issue with my phone camera. I've got a new one now, so hopefully any future videos I post will be better. And I hope anyone who watched enjoyed, and hopefully see some future videos coming out over the next month or two.